So yeah, I'll run through a couple of not specific success stories, but as Mike touched on there, we've both had quite a bit of experience in conducting and facilitating Skype interviews for our educators. Obviously, this would be aimed more at overseas educators who hadn't arrived to the UK yet, who were seeking long-term roles, and we would conduct Skype interviews with schools because they weren't here to go in and trial. And we did this particularly with a trust of schools in the Surrey area called the Bourne Education Trust. They were very bought into ANZ UK's model and understood that we primarily had a lot of overseas educators coming over to London, and they still felt that they could take on some really high quality staff from us via Skype and via a virtual interview, even though they weren't here yet. So we really wanted to take that experience and those successes and apply it to the situation that we're in now, because it's going to be more relevant than ever. It's just we're not used to doing it with people who are here on the ground, but it's going to be exactly the same process. So with that being said, we can now move on to sort of talking you through how we support you and prep you for that scenario. So what we would usually do is, if we had a role that came in that you've kind of said fits your preferences or what you're looking for, we would give you a call. We'd talk you through all the elements of the role. So that could be when it's going to start, the duration, is it part-time or full-time, a little bit about the staff culture, the department, the different classes you're working with, the behaviour, class sizes. We would get a really thorough job brief from the school and talk you through all of that. And then if it's something you want to explore further, we would then follow that up with an email with that write-up with all the information and a link to the school website. Once you got through that part and you wanted to go forward, we'd look to arrange a time that's suitable for you and suitable for the school to have that chat and have that interview. And again, just keep exploring further as to whether it's going to be a good fit for both parties. So what we would do then is, again, as I said, we'd arrange the time and date. And there's a couple of options in how it can work, particularly with Skype. We can, as your consultant, we can actually facilitate that call. So we could add yourself and the school in on a Skype call, introduce both parties, and then we would step out of the call and you would go ahead and have the interview between yourselves. Another option is if, with your permission, we would give your details to the school. So that could be via WhatsApp or FaceTime or Zoom. If you're happy for us to do that, we would give the schools your details, and then you would just call each other directly. In terms of support as well, we'd look to check in with you on the day, so a little bit beforehand, just to check in and see how you're getting on, see that everything's still okay to go ahead. If there's any last minute questions that have cropped up overnight that you think, oh, it'd be really good to kind of know that beforehand, and we can support you and help you with that before you get going. So in terms of what to expect, I think from the beginning of a virtual interview, it's going to be pretty similar to what it would be if you were having a face-to-face interview. The usual opening would be, tell us a bit about yourself. They want to find out about you as a person and your personality and how you come across. And then I think what they would do after that is they would delve into your background, a little bit about your experience, what you've done previously. They would already have a copy of your CV beforehand, so they might maybe dig a little deeper, ask some questions about some previous roles that are going to be relevant to the role that you're interviewing for. I think it's really key to have an answer prepared about why this role is of interest to you, why the school's of interest to you, how you became to be registered with the agency and looking for this specific role. What else would they ask? They definitely ask a question about safeguarding, which we've had numerous different webinars on, and that's something we can support you with as well beforehand. They probably ask you questions about how you'd plan to keep the children safe in the classroom. Definitely about behaviour management as well would probably come up. So again, before the interview, we would send you some documents that we put together, which is what to expect, what kind of questions are going to crop up, so you can really be thoroughly prepared. And we'd also send you a document called Tips and Tricks for Interviews, which we'll come on to as well. Mike, I don't know if you wanted to talk about one of the techniques that's used during interviews as well,
Yeah, do
or
you
do you
want
want to? Yeah,
to
you
do
can go
that?
into that.
That's right. I was just as you get on tips and tricks, I think I was just gonna add on to what you kind of started off talking about in terms of the value that we can add as consultants, and with our experience in Skype interviewing. Like, I think something that is really important is that we really get to know the soft parts about the school, and what I mean by that is the stuff that you don't get from the website, or for otherwise it's, we've met the head teachers, and we've, and the head of departments, and we talk to them kind of daily, and we know what the culture's like in the school, and bits and pieces like that. So all the little value adds that, Janine, that you'll know from all of your success, that, and when we prepare guys, that we can kind of give them the hints and the tricks about the school and the culture, and maybe there's a sporting
Yeah,
department or something that kind of fits with the personality of the person. So that's all the other stuff that, along with the preparation support, that we like to add value in as well, is just really removing it from a job and a school. It's more of a real personality fit and culture fit as well.
yeah,
But
definitely.
going on to the tips and tricks. So I think, Janine, one thing you were
Mm,
going to bring up was the star technique, which
mhm,
is something that I think is really important, but it might not be something that everyone is aware of, or a technique that they've used in interviewing before. So the star technique is when you ask a question, it's really important to bring it back to a situation or a task, and then action and result. So the S and the T is situational task, and then A, obviously, action, and R, result. So for example, Janine, you mentioned a question might be brought up around safeguarding or behavior management. Let's use behavior management in this example. So you might get asked, yeah, in your previous, or what are your behavior management strategies, for a given situation, and then you would take the time to review the question, and don't be afraid to ask a question back to them to clarify. So
yeah,
you want me to describe
definitely.
this? Okay, cool. So you take it back to a situation. Now, if you're a grad, your situation may be a placement because you haven't had classroom experience yet. But in that placement, you've this was a situation. So you had a kid with certain needs, behaving kind of out of control. That was a situation. So the task was to obviously rectify that and settle them down. The action I did with this was this: I implemented these techniques or strategies from your teaching or from your experience, or whatever technique it may be, to manage behavior, and the result was this. The student settled down, and we were able to get back on to task. So if
Yeah.
you get stuck, just have maybe a few of those in the back of your mind,
Mm,
in terms of examples of situation, action, and result, just to be able to answer those questions. So that was just a handy tip, but your consultant will talk over those with you as well.
yeah. They're included as well in the documents that we send you to get you really prepared. And as Mike said, it's likely, in the what to expect, that you will be asked a situational question. What would you do in this situation? And it's good to just have those examples as a backup. Another thing to expect is just that at the end, they're going to say, do you have any questions? And I think it's really important that you think of a couple of questions to have up your sleeve at the end. So that could be anything to, what is the staff culture like? What is there any, professional development that I can get involved with, any extracurricular stuff? And again, that's stuff that we can help you with, but it's always good to have a couple of questions up your sleeve at the end. It shows that you've really kind of put some time and thought into the role in the school. And it just shows that you have gone to that extra effort, which comes across really well. So yeah, moving on to the tips and tricks. I'd say the main one is be prepared. As I'm saying, you know, we do support you as much as possible, but I'd say things like reading over the school website and just really getting a feel for the school ethos and what they're about. Even being prepared in a sense of, you know, being ready, you know, 15-10 minutes beforehand, being sat at your computer, have your cup of tea ready to go, and you know, have your CV in front of you so you can refer back to previous experience that you've had before, make any notes on the school. I think that's really important, and I think that it comes across as much, it comes across as much if you're not prepared as it comes across if you've really prepared as well. So say that's definitely a big one. One that we have had a couple of feedbacks for before is about the way you presented. So obviously you're similar to how Mike and I are now. You'd be sort of from here upwards. You might have your pajama bottoms on the bottom, and we have no idea. But at least the school has no idea. So you want to be professional. You don't need to be, you know, in a or you know, go all out in a, you know, tuxedo and ball gown, but you want to be, you know, fairly professional. Just it does come across when we've had people that have just showed up in a t-shirt or, you know, hair all over the place or whatever. It does just come across that there hasn't been any sort of thought behind it. So that, I'd say that's really important as a first impression. Just as well, clarity, just being really clear with what you're saying. Take your time. You don't need to rush. As Mike said before, if there's something that you don't understand, or you know, it just needs rewording or rephrasing, don't be afraid to say, I'm so sorry, would you mind repeating that question, or do you mind just rephrasing that? I just want to be 100% sure that I understand. And it's not a bad thing. It just comes across that you want to be, you know, on point, and you want to be on it with your answers. If and if you're not sure, don't wing it, because they'll be able to pick up on that. I think the main thing as well is just to completely be yourself. Like, you don't want it to come across forced. You want to smile. You want to present your personality. You want to present the best version of yourself. Essentially, I'd say that's definitely a good tip and trick. And then just going on to after the interview and the follow up, we will. It would be good if you text your consultant or just email them once you're finished and just say, I finished the interview. We'll call you as soon as possible. We want to know from your perspective first how you found it, how everything went. Each school will have a different style way of doing things, and you know, you can pick up on body language and cues and things like that, and in terms of how you've answered the question. So yeah, speak to your consultant and just give them a bit of an update from your perspective. And then what we'll do is we'll call the school and just get as much feedback as possible. So if you've been successful, that's obviously great news. We'll feed that back to you. And that's when you would go into kind of more detail about the placement and the role. So it'd be things like when you're going to start, what's expected of you before you start, you know, pay expectations, everything along those lines. And we'll really go through that with you in thorough detail. And then we'll follow up with a booking confirmation and placement confirmation. So you've got everything in writing, everything's there for you. And then if you are unsuccessful, you know, you don't always necessarily need to see it as a negative thing. There's a lot that you can learn from those experiences, and it's never going to be a case of your consultant's going to ring you and say, oh yeah, sorry, it's not going ahead, and that's it. We'll be thorough with you. We'll get specifics from the school. We'll get proper feedback, and we'll relay that to you, and see it as an opportunity to learn, and that's going to put you in really good stead for the next time. So yeah, that's everything in regards to the follow-up. Have you got anything else you want to add, Mike?
I think you said it all pretty much, Janine. I think between us, like we've done multiple of these Skype interviews, and over you know, ANZ UK started essentially on Skype interviews. You know, the bread and butter of ANZ UK is 15 years of you know, bringing educators from overseas you know, over to the UK. So you know, across the office, you know, we've got vast amounts of experience in this. I suppose a message for these guys is feel free to ask any questions. You know, don't be shy. There's no such thing as a silly question in terms of preparation or otherwise. Again, there's you know, multiple guys across the office, all with good experience in this area.